The first time I realized my professor might actually hate me was when he smirked at my essay in front of the whole class and said, "Impressive attempt, Carter. Almost convincing." The second time, I made the catastrophic mistake of sending him a sarcastic text that wasn't meant to reach his inbox. I wanted to die right there in my dorm room when the message sent notification popped up. One slip of the thumb and suddenly the words, "Glad to know your entire personality revolves around belittling undergrads. Do you rehearse those smirks in the mirror?" Were on their way to Professor Daniel Hale, the man whose approval or maybe just attention I had been secretly craving for months. And then came his reply, "Dinner. Tonight. Off campus. We should talk." Daniel Hale wasn't just any professor. He was the kind of man who walked into a lecture hall and made every whispered conversation die in an instant. Dark, intelligent eyes. A voice that could slice through excuses like a knife. And that maddening, mocking half-smile that made me want to strangle him and kiss him in the same breath. Everyone loved him. Everyone hated him. I couldn't decide which side I was on. So now, sitting at a small Italian restaurant downtown with the dim lights casting shadows across his jawline, I couldn't believe this was happening. "You really should be more careful about who you insult," he said, leaning back in his chair, wine glass in hand. His tone was casual, but his eyes, God, those eyes were pinned on me like I was a specimen under a microscope. I tried to play it off, shrugging, my palms sweating beneath the table. "I didn't mean for you to actually see that. And yet I did." He took a slow sip of his wine, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Tell me, Carter, do you always talk about me like that?" His question hit me like a sucker punch, because the truth was yes. I had ranted about him to my friends, complained about his brutal grading, his cryptic feedback, his constant smirks. But I had also, God help me, talked about the way he rolled up his sleeves, how his voice dipped low when he was annoyed, how he had this unshakable presence that left me restless at night. I forced a laugh. "Only when I'm frustrated." "Frustrated?" he repeated, as if tasting the word. His eyes flickered down to my clenched hands on the table, then back up to my face. "Is that what we'd call it?" My throat tightened. This was dangerous territory. Was he teasing me again? Or was there something else behind the careful choice of words? The waiter brought our food, breaking the tension for a moment. I picked at my pasta, suddenly hyper-aware of every movement, every glance. He seemed perfectly at ease, as if dragging a student out for dinner after a near insult was the most natural thing in the world. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Why did you even agree to meet? You could have ignored me, or worse, reported me." Daniel set his fork down slowly, deliberately. Then he leaned forward, closing the distance between us until I could smell the faint trace of cedarwood cologne. His voice dropped lower. "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't notice you." The words hit me harder than I expected. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I tried to form a response, but my mouth went dry. "You act like you hate me," he continued, his gaze unwavering. "But I think we both know there's something else under that sarcasm. Am I wrong?" It was like he had peeled me open with a single sentence. Every late-night thought, every conflicted feeling, every stupid moment I spent watching him instead of listening to the lecturite all rushed back. "You're my professor," I managed, my voice cracking despite my effort to stay composed. "And you're my student," he said almost gently. "But you're also an adult. And I'm not blind." The air between us felt electric, heavier than anything I had ever known. For the first time, I wasn't sure who was teasing who anymore. The restaurant buzzed around us, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing at our table. Somewhere in the background, soft jazz played, but all I could hear was my own pulse and the low rumble of his voice. I leaned back, trying to gather my thoughts, but he leaned forward again, erasing the space I had tried to put between us. His knee brushed against mine under the table, and the contact sent a jolt through my body. "You don't scare me?" I blurted out, though it sounded more like a plea than a declaration. "Good," he said softly, and for the first time, his smirk softened into something vulnerable, something almost tender. "Because I don't want you afraid of me. I want you honest with me." And for once, I couldn't hide behind sarcasm. I stared at him, the man who had been my tormentor, my fascination, my undoing, and realized the lines we were about to cross weren't just academic. They were personal, dangerous, maybe even inevitable. By the time the plates were cleared and the bill was paid, the night air outside felt cooler, sharper, filled with possibility. We walked side by side, the distance between us shrinking with every step. "You know this is complicated," I said quietly. Daniel's hand brushed mine just the barest touch, like a question. "Everything worth feeling is," and somehow that terrified me and thrilled me all at once. The night air was cool as we walked down the quiet streets, my hands shoved into the pocket of my hoodie while Daniel's moved freely at his sides, like he wasn't carrying the same chaos I was. Every step felt heavier, as though the weight of what had been said over dinner still hung between us, unspoken but undeniable. We reached the corner near my dorm when he finally stopped walking. The glow of the streetlight cast his face in gold and shadow, and for the first time, he didn't look like the untouchable professor, the man who had mocked me in class and toyed with my pride. He looked human and tired. "You don't have to say anything now," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "But don't lie to me anymore, Carter. Don't lie to yourself either." Something in me cracked. All the resentment, the sarcasm, the bravado was armor I had used to protect myself from what I didn't want to admit. That I liked him. That maybe I had liked him all along. "I don't hate you," I said, almost a whisper. His eyes softened, and for a brief, suspended moment, he looked like he might close the distance between us. But then he took a careful step back and I realized why. We were still teacher and student. And no matter what I felt, that line was real. The following weeks were a torment. Every lecture felt like walking on glass. Every look from him carried more weight than the words he spoke aloud. My friends noticed I was distracted, but I couldn't explain. How could I? How could I tell them that every smirk from him was now a question? Every silence an answer I was too afraid to face. Then one afternoon he asked me to stay behind after class. The room emptied, leaving only the hum of the overhead lights and the distant chatter in the hallway. He leaned against the desk, arms folded, watching me with that same steady gaze. "I shouldn't have said those things at dinner," he began. His tone was calmer now, almost regretful. "It wasn't fair to you." Something inside me twisted. "You think I don't know that?" I shot back. "You think I don't know this is messed up?" He looked almost startled by my outburst, but I couldn't stop. The words poured out like a dam breaking. "I've spent weeks trying to convince myself that I don't care about what you said, that I don't care about you. But I do. And it's ruining me." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he moved closer, each step deliberate, until he stood just a breath away. "It's ruining me too," he admitted. His voice cracked on the last word, and it was the first time I'd ever heard him sound unsure. Vulnerable. That was the night we finally stopped pretending. It didn't happen with fireworks or some cinematic kiss under the rain. It happened in the quiet of his apartment, where books lined the walls and the air smelled faintly of coffee. We talked for hours, really talked. About fear, about loneliness, about how exhausting it was to want something we shouldn't want. And then, when the silence stretched too long, when the words failed us, his hand found mine. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was steady, warm, grounding. I didn't pull away. "I can't promise this won't hurt us," he said, his forehead resting against mine. "I know," I whispered, "but I'd rather hurt with you than feel nothing at all." When his lips finally touched mine, it wasn't about breaking rules. It wasn't about rebellion. It was about release. About choosing, for once, not to fight what had been burning between us all along. The weeks that followed weren't easy. We were careful, painfully careful. In class, he was still Professor Hale, strict and composed. Outside, he was Daniel, the man who let me see him without the armor. Sometimes it felt impossible to balance the two worlds, like one misstep would shatter everything. But there were moments, tiny, perfect moments that made it worth it. His hand brushing mine when no one was looking. The way he'd slip an encouraging note into my graded papers, hidden beneath the red ink. The quiet nights spent on his couch, watching movies we didn't really pay attention to. And slowly, I realized something. It wasn't just infatuation. It wasn't just the thrill of the forbidden. It was real. He cared. And so did I. By the time the semester ended, I thought I'd be drowning in dread. But instead, I felt lighter. Because once grades were turned in and the official ties between us dissolved, we didn't have to hide anymore. The night after my last exam, we walked through campus together, hand in hand. No pretenses, no secrets, just us. "You still smirk too much," I teased, bumping his shoulder. He laughed softly, the sound vibrating through me. "And you still send texts you shouldn't." I grinned. "Guess some mistakes are worth making." He stopped walking then, pulling me gently toward him. Under the soft glow of the lamppost, he kissed me, not with hesitation this time, but with certainty, with promise. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't the end of a story we weren't supposed to have. It was the beginning of something neither of us could have predicted, but both of us desperately needed. Something real. Something ours. Because sometimes love doesn't come the way it should. Sometimes it comes wrapped in sarcasm, in smirks, in mistakes that turn into chances. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to answer when someone says dinner tonight, it just might change your life. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.